All right, mic check, I'm good. So I'm Max Ceron, CWB Association Welding podcast. Today we have a really cool guest, Welding podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and as always, I'm looking for great talent and stories from across Canada, North America, and around the world. Today I have Jerrick Ash coming to me from Ontario, who's a millwright out there, and we're going to be discussing a few of the topics of what is the millwright world and also his job, because I'm very interested because he has listed here that he works at a gold mine in Red Lake, Ontario. And I've also worked in a gold mine, so I would like to talk on that. So let's get started. Jerrick, how you doing?
Pretty good. Yourself, Max?
I'm doing good. It's Friday, man. It's the best day of the week.
Perfect.
Although I would argue Saturday's probably up there because you don't work at all on Saturdays. Well, not anymore. Now, when you get old, you don't really work on weekends anymore. When you're young and trying to prove it, there's a lot more weekend work. How about you? What do you got planned for the weekend?
I'm hoping to get out, do a little bit of ice fishing, maybe take the little kids on the skidoos. They've been asking about that all week, so hopefully that works out.
Well, that'll be a nice place. I heard you guys got lots of snow out there, so
We're supposed to be getting a little bit, yeah. So that'll be really nice. A little bit of fresh snowfall.
good. So you're a millwright now, but you started off as a welder, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Well,
All right, so let's go right to the start. Where's your roots? Where are you from? Where were you born? How did you where did you start out from?
so, born and raised in Red Lake, Ontario.
Oh, okay.
And so our industries typically here are mining and forestry. And throughout high school, pretty young, wasn't really quite sure what I wanted to get into. I had some friends a little bit older than me, and one of them particularly was going school for welding after graduating high school. So I thought, well, I'm going to try to check this out too. And so throughout the classes in high school, I signed up for the trove class and ended up liking it. And it just kind of went from there.
So normally when there's a large mine or operation center of any kind, whether it's manufacturing, mining, whatever, near a small town, it kind of becomes like the lifeblood. That's kind of very much a Canadian, North American world. You know what? Honestly, it's a worldwide thing. But if you got a big industry and you got the rural areas around it, they kind of depend on it. They feed into it. It's like everyone knows somebody or that works at the mine, or everyone, whether it's in payroll or in the office or in the shop or whatever, they kind of hire the town, right? Is it the same thing in Red Lake?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So was your family involved in the main industries in the area there too?
Yep, for sure. My father had worked in the mine actually from start to finish in his career, so that's pretty rare.
Mm-hmm.
As well, both my grandfathers have worked in mining as well.
So it's in the blood, eh?
It definitely, yeah.
And what about your mom? What about her side of the family? Or are they involved in even the supplementary industries around it?
She actually worked at the mine for, I think, a limited time just after high school.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, she had left. But her father as well worked there too. So
so that there's a couple things there. First of all, does the mine or did the mine invest into the high school? I was just in small town Saskatchewan. There's a company called Borgo, and they basically fund the welding shop at the high school because they basically want to hire all the kids from the high school for their shop, right? And I thought that was kind of a smart play. Like, they get to practice building things in high school that they actually will build in the shop, which I was like, that's pretty smart. It's kind of sneaky, but smart. How's the involvement with the mine there in the town, like for investment wise?
So I'm quite a bit removed from the high school scene.
But when you were there, yeah.
Yeah, when I was there, as far as I know, there were they would bring material there, and
consumables, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. yeah, as well, they had scholarships, bursaries that they would give out, and so yeah, there's definitely a presence there.
So most rural people, when they grew up with a dad who worked at the mine, grandpa worked at the mine, wife worked at the mine, father worked at the mine, dog worked at the mine, fish worked at the mine. Usually in that scenario, a lot of young people have the tendency to want to get away, right? They don't want to do what everyone did, or they want to move away. But you're still in Red Lake. You're working at the mine. Did you ever have that notion that you wanted to run away and try something new? Did you, or have you been pretty happy with the situation there?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people I knew back in high school, same thing. They all wanted to kind of take off and experience different things, bigger city living and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Myself, I did my 2 year welding and fabrication course at Cambrian College in Sudbury, and that was a bit of a taste of the city for me and just something completely different out of my element.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed it, but I'm cut out to be in a small town.
And they just cut the ribbon on a new Cambrian College campus there. This last year, I was there for the one of the opening weeks, and it is insane. It is beautiful, huge tech center. Yeah. So, I mean, what was that experience like for you? Taking the 2 year program at Cambrian. What did you learn? What was the program, and what was it like?
It was amazing. So pretty well from the ground up. As far as stick welding, we had some wire feed, MIG, and shielded, flux core. A lot of fabrication involved as well. So, we had, solid welding classes combined with fab classes. It was great. And like, that was where I really started to hone my skills.
Mm-hmm.
It was an excellent program. I can't say enough good things about it.
Yeah. And did you like the fab side more than the welding side? Or at the time, was it like, I'm going to be a welder. This is what my plan is. This is what I'm going to do.
I do enjoy fab for sure. But it's nice once you get everything tacked up, fitted up, and then you can just drop the hook.
Yeah.
And so definitely both enjoyable, but they each have their place for sure.
So you finished your 2 year program. It sounds like you were missing home, ready to go back. At this point, right out of college, were you like already back on the driving back home, being like, okay, time to find a job, or was there work already waiting for you, or what was the plan once you graduated?
Yeah, so pretty cool story actually. I had dropped a resume off at the mine. Obviously, I wanted to get in there because I had previous experience being a co-op student there. So I hadn't heard anything and hadn't heard anything, and I thought, okay, well, at that time the West was booming,
Mm-hmm.
so I thought, well, I'm going to start looking into where I should start dropping off resumes out West. And in that same week, I got two phone calls from the mine back home and two different job offers.
They must have had their ears burning. They knew you were about to leave, and they're like, "Oh, well, we better hold them in." So, what is it about the gold mine that you like? What was it that attracted you to being there? Aside from it being in your hometown and being close to home, and that family aspect, a lot of people don't like working in gold mines. They're kind of I would say on the rougher side of mines in terms of mining operations. I have my background in quite a bit of mining. And I also worked at a gold mine, but in Africa. I worked in a gold mine in West Africa in Ghana, which is one of the largest gold mines in the world. But I've also been in potash and kind of the other dirty mines, I would say. So, what is it that attracts you to that work? Because it is a lot of, well, I would say 90% of your day is repairing things that are breaking down and running around and trying to stop things from collapsing.
Absolutely, it's a challenge, and
Uh-huh.
it's definitely fast paced. But what I like about it or one of the things would be just the big equipment. Um, everything's heavy. Everything is, just on a bigger scale,
Yeah.
and I definitely enjoy that. and just a challenge. It's a fast-paced environment, lots of tons throughput, so that means lots of repairs, lots of maintenance, lots of work, and it's just satisfying to see, the start of the shift. There's something in complete disrepair, and at the end of the day, when you leave, it's running, it's turning, it's going smooth. It's just it's satisfying.
So what kind of format is the Red Lake gold mine? So, for the listeners that don't know anything about gold mining, when people think of mines, they kind of think of two sort of examples. One being the big shaft that goes way deep underground that, they're either digging it out by rock or they're using solution. A solution mine is when they mix it with water and kind of pump it back up to separate it. The other one is the open pit where they're just scraping the surface and going down in a big, cone-shaped pit and opening it up more and more. Both those types of mines can be used for many different materials. What kind of mine do they have there in Red Lake, and what kind of processes are they using?
This is an underground hard rock mine.
Okay.
There's several access shafts. It's more or less like 3 or 4 properties amalgamated together under one roof now. And so, yeah, all shaft access. There is a porthole. You can construct it now. It's probably a year and a half old, something like that. Yeah, and it's all hard rock mining. So blasting,
Picking, netting, all that fun stuff. There was a program here in Saskatchewan. I'm in Saskatchewan, so
Okay.
there's a program here in Saskatchewan called the General Mine Safety Awareness Course, and it's a wonderful course. I think it's mandatory in all Saskatchewan now, but I think it's gonna get moving across the country. But I remember when we were first looking at it, they had videos from like the 60s, being like how to be safe underground. You know what I mean? And they have all these people kind of like tapping on the rock, listening to the rock. And I was like, for being 50 years old or 60 years old, that video, some of that stuff is still happening. Like, I mean, the technology's gotten better, but when you're talking about blasting underground and then basically drag lining out rock, what kind of danger is this situation? If people are like, wow, gold mining sounds really interesting, is it dangerous is the question. What would your answer be?
I would say it could be, but it's controllable, and it is controlled. We've
Mhm.
got methods like ground clearing, vent clearing, ground support is, obviously paramount. Different methods of ground support. So yeah, I would say it's very controllable.
How old is the mine?
Oh geez, I think it started in the late 40s.
Yeah, because like, I mean, a lot of the mines in Canada are coming up on 100 years old, I heard, and it's kind of, well, it just shows how much resources we have. Like, if a mine can go for 80 years and they're still digging stuff out, they found something big, right? So production wise, what's the mine like? How does it rank? Does it do well? Is there layoffs? Is it always busy? What's a day or what's a year in the life at the mine?
It seems to be like busy, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely I would say challenging. Like it's always, lots of throughput, and with lots of throughput, hopefully comes lots of ounces. Um, so that's the name of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. It's just fast paced environment.
And how are you for staffing? Is it the same issues there in the rest of Canada where it's can't find enough workers? Is there if there was young people listening to this looking to cut their teeth in a cool mine, would you say, hey, come to Red Lake and apply for a job?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's kind of a twofold issue. It's, obviously tough finding tradespeople, and challenging to get them to move to a small rural setting like we're in right now. It's,
Mm-hmm.
hard to attract people from a bigger center, let's say from Sudbury to come up here. There's not as many amenities, if you want to say that.
Well, it's interesting because I've heard that consideration before that people aren't really willing to move to a small town. But then, I'm in the West, and every time there's a boom, everyone from the East comes out here, right? It's just like, oh, here we go. Here's another round of people from Ontario, Quebec, and the Maritimes. It's And they don't seem to mind moving out to small towns when it's out west, but it seems to be more of an issue when it's just an hour away. You know what I mean? I don't know what it is, but like, I mean, Fort McMurray ain't nothing fancy. But everyone was like climbing over each other to try to get there. And I get the money was big, but you know, you're in the middle of nowhere. You got 10-month winters, and and I mean, the nature's nice in the 2 months that it's nice, but it's not a great place, I would say, in my opinion, to stay for an extended period of time. And you know, I say that my daughter lives up there, but what would be some of the attractions for someone to move into rural Ontario? You know, if there's people being like, oh man, that job sounds cool, but I don't want to move to rural Ontario. You know, what's the benefits? You know, what keeps you there?
Oh, so much. Just this space. Like I've been to Toronto, a few times, and it's just it blows my mind that there's just no space, and you're waiting for everything. Everywhere you go, it's a lineup, it's a wait, just a process. Here, it's just you've got square kilometers per person. It's fantastic. Like, the wilderness is just unbelievable. I'm looking out my window right now across the channel of the lake we're on, and it's just stunning. Winter, summer, there's just so much to do. The outdoors is just amazing. It's a great opportunity to be out here. It's just quieter. It's less of a rat race, I find.
Yeah, and you don't really miss out on anything with the internet now, really. Like, it's not like you're not having access to stuff. Although it probably wouldn't be good to be an Uber driver in your town.
You'd be pretty slow, I think. Yeah.
So, this connection for the podcast, it came in through apprenticesearch.com. And I'm interested to know what your connection is with that group, or how you ended up even getting in those conversations, with Daniela and us, and because it sounds like you're in an interesting table there.
Yeah, so I got to meet them at CanWeld 2023 in Moncton, and I just started talking with Michelle Murray from Apprentice Search, and just about just conversations surrounding my co-op experience at the same mine I'm working at now, through my trade school, and that really exposed me to just trades and mining environment as well. And so just talking about that and the importance of that, and going forward, how I would like to see that happen more, and just provide that experience for other kids coming through, trying to, just experience a bit of the trade.
And what did you think of CanWeld? We're working towards CanWeld 2024 now in Toronto in June. How did you like the CanWeld in Moncton? Was it your first time at a CanWeld?
Yeah, first time at a CanWeld. And I just thought it was awesome. Like, so many different topics covered, high level kind of engineering end of things, and then like maybe things geared more towards like the person on the floor. I really like that. And actually a lot of my takeaways from that were from the vendor tables, just being able to speak with people from Fronius and from Ergomig, manufacturers like that. Really interesting products, and definitely a lot of takeaways from that.
Awesome. So let's go back to the timeline here. I jumped ahead and I'm jumping all over the place, but you're back at the mine after school's done, and you're working as a welder, right? That's what your certificate was in. Now, did you follow through with the welder apprenticeship and get your red seal in welding, or did you make a transition?
So it kind of happened all at once. I was working at the time on an underground construction crew as a welder, and I saw some job postings. There was just a whole array of apprenticeships that come up. And I had some experience. I was a summer student for 2 summers in the mill, on a mill maintenance crew, and I thought that would be a really neat place to end up. And one apprenticeship was for there, a Millwright apprenticeship. I put my name in, kind of thinking I didn't really have much of a chance, but I thought, well, you don't win the lottery without buying a ticket. So I put my name in, and lucky enough to get it.
And that was the beginning of your Millwright journey?
That was, yep. So at the time I got that, I wanted to finish my welding, schooling and education. So what I did was I challenged my red seal, got my red seal for welding, and then began the Millwright apprenticeship.
And a lot of I believe it's about, just over 1,000 hours of your welding goes towards your Millwright as well. It's transferable. Did you know
Mhm.
that? Did you use it?
Well, at the time I went through, I'm not sure what it looks like now, but
Yeah.
it was a benchmark for hours. So as long as you had your competencies, you
Hmm.
could. And so I didn't really run into any issues hours wise.
Good. So it was interesting. You brought up a couple different aspects of the work at a mine. You know, there's the construction side. There's a lot of framework, structural that happens inside of a mine, above the mine, under the mine, everywhere. Whether it's expansions of facilities, whether it's even like trailers for where people eat, and then just the infrastructure of the mines underneath that are under constant moving and changing. The things change all the time. But then there's the maintenance side of it, which is a whole nother game. My dad, he was a boiler maker and he worked maintenance at a potash mine. It's kind of how I got into the mining game. And I remember him telling me as a young welder that maintenance is where it's at if you're going to be at a mine, because you're doing something different every day. It's always creative, it's always neat, and you get put on teams where you're with a couple millwrights, maybe a machinist and an electrician and a plumber, and you kind of have a team of people that go out and just try to solve problems however you can. And some days you're just watching others work, and some days they're watching you work. And I always thought that was interesting. So when I first started picking up mining work, I would always ask to be on the maintenance crew, and I really enjoyed it. I still tell young kids now, like if you're looking for work, and not necessarily just in mining, but even if you're looking at plants or factories, the maintenance gigs I feel are kind of the most creative one. And I think they get a bad rap. People think maintenance, they think cleaning, and nothing, no shade against cleaners. We need you, we love you, but maintenance is a different thing in the industrial world. It's a different job. Like, so what does maintenance look like at your mine?
Yeah. So obviously fast paced for
Yeah.
sure. And like you said, working in teams with different trades. I find a lot of times, millwrights, welders, HD mechanics, machinists, we're all kind of throwing at problems together. And it's really cool because you get to pick up a lot of tips and tricks from the different trades. And, been lucky enough to work with quite a few, older, more experienced vets that have been in the industry for quite some time. And so it's really interesting to pick up, a lot of knowledge from them.
How hard was the transition from welder to industrial mechanic or millwright for you?
Um, I found it to be a pretty easy transition. I mean, you know, still a millwright welder now. Do quite a bit of welding still, but it's a really nice balance I find. So you're kind of using both hats, both trades, if you want
Hmm.
to. Yeah, definitely enjoyable. So you got your welding and fab side, and then the next day you could be rebuilding a pump, changing bearings on whatever kind of machine. It's definitely a lot of variety.
And you have your red seal in millwright now, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So dual red seal. So for someone who's coming out of either program, say level one, and they're looking at these qualifications, um, which one would you say was more intensive for theory, and which one would you say was more intensive for practical, or would you rate them kind of equally, or how do you look at them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I would say, through my experiences, in my opinion, I would say that the practical was much more intense for the welding side of things, just repetitive muscle memory and just trying to, you know, just develop those skills and a lot of repetitiveness. On the millwright
Hmm.
side, yeah, the theory was very intense. Even throughout my apprenticeship, I was probably 7 days out of 10 I was welding, so it was hard for me to get the time on the tools. So I found that the theory for millwrighting was yeah, a lot of studying, a lot of late nights in the trade school for sure.
Well, and how much of the millwright theory do you actually have to remember, like, verbatim? Because I've looked at the millwright books, I've looked at the industrial mechanic books, and there's like, the lash on this is 0.001, and then you get an 8.8 to 1 compression on this type of gear, on this type of cylinder for this type of pump, and blah blah blah. Do you actually have to know all that stuff on site, or is it more about just understanding how machines work and kind of working backwards from there.
Yeah, definitely. So there's really not a requirement to remember, the manual verbatim at all. There's OEM manuals that we have all accessible. We actually are given tablets. So we go to the job site and we go in the tablet, the OEM manual can come right up and all the specs are right there. So definitely could take that off your worry list as far as, oh geez, do I have to remember everything? For sure.
How important is tech for your work? You've been there, what, 18 years now, if I do the math. And so if you've been there 18 years, in 18 years, I've seen a lot of changes in the welding industry. What kind of changes have you seen in your industry for the technologies coming in?
Yeah, a lot. There's still obviously some paperwork flying around, but a lot of it's electronic. And even I find our time cards when we swipe in and out, all electronic. A really interesting thing was these tablets that we just got issued about a year and a half ago, and our work orders come up on there. So when we go to fix a rock crusher, we come up and we see a few issues we want to pass along, for whether it's the cross shift or maintenance planners for follow-up work. Everything gets captured on there and can't be missed because it has to be acknowledged by so many people. And I just find that's awesome. Like what a great way to just keep tabs, keep the thumb on your maintenance of machines, rather than just paperwork, because that can get slips by a few desks, and then all of a sudden that problem has now grown into something much bigger. Now you're down for 3-4 days, right? So definitely a lot of merit to technology, in my opinion.
Yeah, and obviously I agree. I think that one of the biggest improvements that people notice, and this is good for young people when it comes to technology, is how it's improved safety. And I think it's exactly what you're saying, the accountability, the traceability, the information that you need, even lockout systems. Like in my past, I've been on machines that were locked out that still got started up. And that's a terrible feeling, because you're very close to dying in those moments, right? And you realize that there was a procedure, the procedure was followed, but and it didn't work, right? So technology has a really good way now of tracking those systems and making sure that things are done properly. Plus, there's digital lockouts now where things can happen on a computer, which I've also seen screw up. But at least it's another layer, right? At least it's another layer of safety. With an old mine like yours, there's always this balance between implementing new equipment, implementing new technologies, new systems, but also keeping some of the old systems that have been successfully working for 60 years and are still kicking butt today. Just as long as you keep them updated, keep them clean and running and going, they're not going to stop. So, how do you see that in your mind, in terms of the old versus the new?
Yeah, a lot of old, definitely.
A lot of old, yeah.
Yeah, but it's proven itself. It's made a bundle of money over the decades, and I find with some older equipment, of course, it gets more labor intensive as it gets older, and a lot more maintenance heavy. But a lot of money is being spent now, like for upgrades, and just kind of updating the equipment. We've just got a couple of new cone crushers, like all digitally controlled, which is amazing. Like we got rid of them that are probably made in the 40s or 50s. It was just so definitely not to throw shade at the old ones, because they've paid a lot of bills over the years. But it's just nice to see the new stuff come in and digitally controlled, such fine-tuned, machinery like that. It's interesting to see, and then how well it works with the old infrastructure, right? So a lot of challenge putting new machines into an old setting or an old environment.
They kind of don't fit necessarily 100%. Even attachments are different, rails are different, spacings are different. So there's a lot of a lot of the times when we would get new equipment in the mine, there'd be a lot of line boring and drilling of new races and attachment ports because the new thing didn't quite fit the old thing, right?
Yeah, and that's part of the challenge and part of the
Mhm.
once the the outage is done and we're going to commission the new one. It's nice to see it up and running and the old kind of working with the new. And so yeah, definitely satisfying.
I remember one time I was at a steel mill, and I was looking at this machine called the four high, and the four high basically was called the four high because it had these four massive gears, and it was used to coil the rolls of steel into the coils that get put onto the trains that go across Canada. So they had this massive main gear on the front of it that you could see spinning, and it was probably about 4 feet in diameter, just huge pin. And I remember thinking, like, I asked one of the millwrights there that I was working on a bearing project underneath with the rollers, and I was like, man, how big is that main pin that goes through there? And he's like, we don't know, we've never pulled it out. I'm like, how old is it? He's like, it's from the 40s. And I'm like, how is that possible? Like, I'm here changing out bearing blocks that didn't even last 6 months. You know what I mean? And there's a massive, like, 2-story high bearing block with a 4-foot pin through the middle that is still the original pin. And he says to me, and this is before I was like got into metallurgy and the rest of my career, he said the materials that were used to make that pin in the 40s don't even exist on the planet anymore. And that's where technology has to fit in. And I've always taken that with me because we have used up our resources on the planet. That's just a fact. The ore that we pull out of the earth is not the same quality ore that was around 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. And it's getting harder and harder to find the ore. There used to be gold veins that would be popping out of the ground. That's gone, long gone, right? So, you got to go deeper, you got to go farther, and you got to get creative. And I think about that when I see new machinery. It's like, you're talking about the digital indexes, the laser scanning of the walls so that they never bump into edges. Like, some of the new mining equipment's insane. It's so cool. But then I look at the front of it, like the cone part or the teeth or where the carbides are, and I think, how long is that going to last? Because the old machine was made out of materials that are worth more recycled now than it was new, right? Because that quality of steel 60 years ago was just so much higher. So is this new machine going to last 60 more years like the old one? Even like the fancy tools and all, sure, that's awesome. But what about the actual framework or structure of the machine? How do you see that balance between new technology and then the new alloys and new metals and the new requirements expected out of these machines?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I was actually on a job yesterday. We were tearing apart a cone crusher, and we were told to flip the crushing head over and inspect for cracks because our spare one has been sent out for repair for cracks.
Mm-hmm.
We've got another crusher in our secondary crushing plant. It's an old jaw crusher. It must be from the 40s, if not the 40s, and it's still chugging along. So it's really funny you mentioned that. It's you definitely see all the computerization and all everything's digitally controlled. That's great, but yeah, I think people are right when they say they don't make them like they used to.
No, I don't think they can, or the alloys are just too expensive. Like, I mean, and I don't know if this happened in your mine. You've been there long enough though, but I remember about 20 years ago when I was at the mine, stainless steel got really popular right before the big duplex explosion.
Okay.
It was like, so potash is extremely corrosive. So everything you make, and these are solution mines. So solution means they take brine, salt water, they pump it high heat salt water down into the potash, turn it into mud, and then suck it back up, and then they dry it in these huge crystallizers, these big turbines, heat like ovens to dry out the potash and then turn it back into dust form. So it's basically water, mud, back to dry. And the potash, the salt water, the brine solution, all of this stuff just destroys steel. Like, it eats it. Like, you're going through an inch thick plate in 4 months. Like, it's crazy, right? So then all of a sudden it was like, well, why aren't we using stainless? Because stainless doesn't oxidize. So it was like, dude, I swear it would have been hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars across the West, putting stainless, everything, stainless handrails, stainless chutes, stainless conveyors, stainless. I got all my stainless tickets at the time. I loved it. I rode that wave. I made a ton of money. Hooray, stainless. Like, it was cool. But it only lasted about 8 years, 9 years. And then everyone realized that all the stainless stuff corroded just as fast.
Well,
it actually didn't slow down the process of corrosion at all because there's just so much natural oxides in the world, in the ground, iron. The stainless gets contaminated instantly. Once it's contaminated, it's just as bad as everything else. Have you seen in your industry things come in, a trend come in and be like, this is the new great thing? And then 5 years later, 6 years later, you're like, actually, that didn't really work. Let's try something else.
Yeah, in the processing plant where I work, they had some pre-treat tanks that they were replacing. They were, I don't know what the old ones were. They may have even been carbon. I'm not quite sure, carbon steel. They replaced them with new stainless ones, and really nice, impressive looking. Something happened with the weld process. I'm not sure if the heat affected zone wasn't treated properly or pickled after welding.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the tanks lasted a year, and they started leaking through the heat affected zones.
Wow.
Yeah, so they took those out and they put fiberglass ones in, which is pretty interesting. Another section of the processing plant, it's a pressure oxidation plant, and so high heat, high acidity, oxygen enriched environment, and the slurry will go through there, and it just makes it easier to extract the gold. They were using a lot of, I think that the older guys were saying Incolloy. Does that make sense?
Inconel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So they were using, Inconel 620 or something like that. And they were finding that the high acidity in the environment it was put in wasn't lasting. And it was expensive. So they moved it to grade 2 titanium. And it's unbelievable. Like, the corrosion resistance is just nuts.
Well, let's take our break now. We've actually gone past our half an hour. It's been a great conversation. And we'll take our little break now for our sponsors and advertisers. And when we get back, I want to ask you some questions about that process, because that sounds pretty interesting. That was a good section to leave. So don't go anywhere. I'm here with Jerrick Ash, coming to us from the Millwrights at the Red Lake, Ontario gold mine. And we'll be right back after these commercials.
The CWB Association is new and improved and focused on you. We offer a free membership with lots of benefits to anyone interested in joining an association that is passionate about welding. We are committed to educating, informing, and connecting our workforce. Gain access to your free digital publication of the Weld magazine, free online training, conferences, and lots of giveaways. Reach out to your local CWB Association chapter today to connect with other welding professionals and share welding as a trade in your community. Build your career, stay informed, and support the Canadian welding industry. Join today and learn more at cwbassociation.org.
And we are back at the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron. Today I'm having a conversation with Jerrick here, who's a millwright welder coming to us from the gold mine here in Red Lake, Ontario. So right before the break, we were talking about, things that we try in the mines that work, and then sometimes things we don't work. And some of the solutions can be very creative and, technology based. I want to go back to the first solution that I thought was interesting when you said when they went to fiberglass. That is something that we're seeing more and more. CWB Group has just, not just, but we've gotten into the automotive game, and we now have a VW Audi lab in Milton, where they do some R&D for VW and Audi here in Canada, right in the Milton office with CWB. So we're a part of that whole process, which is really cool because it's less and less welding. So now we're looking at a world where welding isn't just welding, fusion welding materials, but it's also just materials joining, because epoxies, fiberglasses, carbon fibers, all these types of things are as strong, if not stronger, than steel in many cases now. So that changes the outlook in terms of how we use certain materials. And we've even learned how to successfully join steel to fiberglass, carbon fiber to aluminum, these cross mixes, which are wild. So, you have these old carbon tanks that didn't leak, but were carbon falling apart just because they're carbon and they fall apart in time. And Then you bring in stainless, but stainless is a very picky material. And as much as it's wonderful, it's only wonderful when it's perfect. If it's not perfect, it's actually less wonderful than mild steel. It's worse than mild steel if it's not good.
Yeah.
So now you're in a situation where, okay, we invested heavily into this beautiful thing that didn't work, and you end up with fiberglass tanks, and people immediately are going to go, fiberglass? How is that? Like, they think of like the bumper on your car that's just going to crack and break, right? And it's not like that. These are different materials that are getting invented and cast and put together. You know, like, what was your impression when they're like, oh yeah, we're getting fiberglass tanks? Were you like, a what? Like,
Yeah, definitely a little skeptical. It's the first time I had heard of it, but I thought maybe just with the abrasive slurry and the agitation in the tank that maybe, we would see a leak, around the agitation zone, but it's holding up. And actually on the inside, I don't know what exactly this coating is made out of. It's like a two-part coating, colors as well, so that when you do a tank inspection, if it's worn through the first color, the second color will show, and it's going to indicate, abrasive wear. And
oh wow,
yeah, so pretty interesting.
that's super helpful. It's like, oh, I can see purple there. Time for a patch or whatever you gotta do. Like,
Yeah,
or relining. I don't know if you reline those things or if they just are cheap enough, you throw them away because fiberglass is a much lower cost product. So maybe it's just like disposable and you put in new ones. I don't know, like.
yeah, I guess time will tell. It's been like 2 years now, and they seem to be working fine. So hopefully they keep on ticking.
Yeah. And then the second example you brought up was, the hot slurry and how it was eating up, everything. Like there was no material that would put up to it. Inconel is a nickel based. Nickel is very, very strong material. Nickel gets used to hard surface a lot of things. But what nickel's best against is like impact resistance and making sure that it doesn't wear down for scraping or actual dynamic loads. Using it in a liquid hot situation for me would not have been my first choice, and it sounds like it didn't really work that well in that situation. But then going to titanium is kind of like going to the rainbow. You're going to like the most expensive material on the planet, almost the most expensive material on the planet, and an extremely difficult one to weld. Like, I mean, you have to have a very, very specific process. Good gas, good purge, good materials, good tungsten, good everything's got the 3 C's, right? Clean, clean, clean.
Yes.
To do titanium, which a lot of people avoid because you may buy it, you may install it, but repairs can be a disaster, right?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that process? How's that working out?
Well, I'm lucky enough to be directly involved in it. One of the people that will make the titanium repairs. And yeah, definitely overwhelming learning to just deal with the not just weld it. The preparation is half the battle, right? Like cleaning up, I always say, and it's so true. So yeah, definitely a pretty big learning curve there. But once you've kind of figured out the game of how to prep it, how to kind of treat it, prior to welding, the welding, it's once you get the hang of that, it's definitely enjoyable and like really satisfactory to see that product come out because it's just so shiny and just it's completely different than a carbon steel or a stainless kind of thing. Yeah, very interesting to work with for sure.
So I've had a few people on the show that are titanium welders, but usually in the non-industrial side. They're usually, exhausts or fancy manifolds or, things related to things to do more with heat, less with wear.
Okay.
So in your instance, though, the industrial setting, what was it like to learn? So like, what are some of the tips and tricks you could tell me? Like, if I get hired, I get fired from CWB next week and I show up in Red Lake and I say, I want to be a titanium welder with you, what are some of the things I'll need to know right off the top when I'm walking out into the shop or into the mine to be like, I got to go repair this?
Like as far as
weld procedures, how do you set it up? What do you do? What type of settings? What do you use?
Okay, so yeah, that's a really cool question. We've got a booth dedicated to the TIG welding.
Mhm.
So yeah, first thing, definitely no material cross contamination kind of thing. We'll prep the booth. If we've done a carbon job or a stainless job in there, everything's cleaned, acetone, acetone, acetone. uh,
So clean, super clean.
oh
Yeah.
yeah. From there, we'll prep the machine, make sure we've got our 100% argon, nice full tank, running through a manifold. So you've got your trailing shield, your back purge, everything, all our trailing shields, our back purges are cleaned as well. Set the machine up, and obviously that would be like a DC straight polarity setup, roughly 200 amps, depending on the thickness of your material.
Mhm.
Uh, and yeah,
200 amps is pretty high. Like that's the. Does it take that much heat to get the titanium to puddle up? Like 200 amps is, and I assume that's probably a 1/8 tungsten.
yeah.
What's you got to move quick? Is that fast, or is that just the heat it takes to get it to wet?
In my experience, yeah, it's just to get to get it to wet exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always a lot of the titanium plate that we're working with, it's 3/4 plate, welding it onto a pretty thick, probably like a 10-inch hub
Mm-hmm.
potato. So there's a lot of heat sink there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just a lot of say prepare, clean, and then also on the other end of things, making sure people don't come in and oh, go and touch it, and then all the contamination in your gloves, like the skin is on that, and just it kind of goes south real quick. So I break out the acetone again and clean it out, and yeah.
And then in terms of like is it like an aluminum where it's gonna drop out if it gets too hot, or is it like a stainless if you sit too long it'll sugar? Like what are some of the scary things you got to be conscious of when you decide to weld titanium?
Yeah, I haven't found the dropout like an
Mm-hmm.
aluminum would, but definitely if you've got improper purge, it'll sugar for sure. It just goes like a white. I call it white death. It's like a white
Mm-hmm.
chalk. Just it's telling you something's wrong.
Yeah.
Something I got sent out to a place in Montreal that does a lot of titanium, and in their shop actually, if one door opens in the shop, whether it's a roll-up door, a man door, or whatever, there's an alarm that goes off, and everybody just stops welding. Just because if the breeze comes in, takes your purge away, it's just a lot of repair and a lot of grinding and die grinding and carbide burring to get all that contamination out. So that's something a huge consideration. Like the booth I'm in, it's we've got really tall welding curtains. It's just kind of an enclosed welding cubicle, really.
Mm-hmm.
And because in the same shop, there's 60-ton trucks coming in and out daily for maintenance. So the doors are open. So it's just another consideration and another layer of just kind of covering all bases as far as material cleanliness and just proper hygiene for the product.
I can't even imagine how you keep a booth like that clean in a mine. Like there's so much stuff flying around all the time that I mean I would be shocked that you get through with zero contamination, but you do somehow, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is surprising for sure because so many of the big equipment like that and those things that come in an HD shop are grease soaked, oil soaked, like it's just
Yeah.
so yeah, there are challenges for sure, but you take the time and proper cleaning, proper prep, and you end up proper welding.
And then how many? Or let's start with the tungsten. What type of tungsten do you use? Is it just your green 100% tungsten, or do you use like a lanthanated, like orange or seriated blue, brown, or red or orange, or?
Yeah, we're lanthanated gold is what we were
Okay. Yeah.
advised to use. Yeah, so that's what we're at. So depending on the job, the thickness of material, amperage, we use the 1/8 for the heavy stuff, obviously, and then if we're doing pipe work, then for the open root stuff, I like to have the 332.
Yeah. And then do you do like a pulse at all, or do you just run it straight DC negative and you just go?
Yeah, DC negative, but since CanWeld actually, and I was listening to some Arc Junkies podcasts, I've been kind of looking to broaden my horizons as far as TIG settings goes. So pulsed is definitely something I want to try to play around with and see if and see if I can make something like that work. Because there's a lot of videos and just a lot of TikToks about different settings like that, and the outcomes are just they're like it's like artwork.
Well, and it's funny because I've been bit in the butt because of that. So I'm not a fancy welder. I never was a fancy welder. I was a mine welder, and then I got into manufacturing and big structural. So really, I was burning big rod, big wire, big whatever all the time. And I mean, obviously, like there's inspection, there's NDE. I was all that game, but pretty wasn't always at the top of my list for work, right? And when I started getting into like this type of work where I was on the management side and then here at CWB, there was a kind of idea that if you're a good welder, you're a pretty welder. Like it's fancy. You got fancy stuff. You got fancy settings. I remember I only had one job once where I had to do fancy stuff. It was at a place called Pro Metal. And I had to do like stainless countertops and stuff for like medical facilities. I hated it. I hated working on 20 gauge. I hated working on 16, these thin materials and TIG, and it would be so slow and arduous. And I was like, and everything would warp so much. It was just like everything about that job pissed me off. I quit after like, I think it was a year I was out of there. But I was in Fab Tech and I was with Jason Becker from Arc Junkies, and we had a weld off competition, and we had to weld this little diamond out of stainless with TIG. And I was a TIG stainless welder for years, so I had no problem. I was like, yeah, I'm down. But I got my handed to me because I came at it like a miner, where I was like, I'm going to slam this thing together, set it to 100, up the sides, done, sealed it up, done deal, looked pretty good, done. It's on my shelf back there. It actually looks pretty good. But then I look at what Jason had done, and he's running this Fronius on like a 55 hertz with the this and the 200 pulse and he knows all the settings. He knows all the toys on that machine. He has them all set, and he just puts in this weld, and it took him twice as long, but it was just beautiful. So I lost the weld off. Mine would pass a leak test. I'll say that. Like it'll pass a leak test, but it wasn't as pretty as his. And there's definitely something to be said about the new processes, the new technology, and just the amazing welds that can be attained. And I would assume it must make it easier. It might be slower. The manufacturer in me gets nuts. Like I watch some TikTok videos and I see people TIG welding on brackets on the side of a tank. Yeah. I will never do that, bro. I don't care who you are. I'm grabbing the MIG gun and I'm zapping that on. There's no way I'm gonna waste an hour putting on hold down brackets on a tank with TIG. Like what a waste of time. But there is places for it, right?
Oh, definitely.
In your industry, you look at this new technologies for TIG welding, and do you see the places where you're like, that would definitely help me in this situation?
For sure. I've had a few jobs where we've had to do some field fitting of pump inlets and stuff like that, and obviously to get a TIG machine set up in a plant like that, probably not super time effective. It's not. So we'll opt for the stick fit up, field fit, and then bring it to the shop. And then, if you want to pretty it up with TIG, then great. But I think each process definitely has its place for sure.
Do you do much stick welding still? Like I would imagine so. Like I mean, most maintenance stuff is usually stick related.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's either the main processes I'm involved with be like carbon steel stick, stainless stick, and then some titanium TIG and stainless TIG as well.
So 308, 309 stainless.
Yeah, 316.
Is it? Yeah, just I was wondering if is 316 still out there lots.
It seems to be for us, yeah.
Yeah. What about 324? That was pretty rare. I haven't seen that in a long time.
I haven't encountered that. Oh, 324.
Yeah, 324 used to be like the highest. It was like 304, 308, 309, 316, and 324 when I was a stainless welder 20 years ago. Those were like all the bands of what was in the 3 series. And then after Duplex came out with the 22 series, 324, I never saw it again. So I think it was like kind of it was probably just too expensive to make, and it got replaced by a different type of stainlesses, right?
Okay.
And I haven't seen 304 in a long time either, so I don't even know if there's if it goes down that far anymore.
Yeah, I haven't really encountered.
I'm just showing everyone listening how old I really am. These electrodes don't exist anymore. And in terms of the TIG or titanium, is there stick titanium? Like, is there a company that has a stick titanium option? Like that might be useful.
Yeah, that would be really useful. I'm not sure if it's a thing, but yeah, there's definitely merit if they could make that work. That's for sure. But
Yeah. To the people listening to this episode, I know Eagle Alloys and Rockmount, you guys are out there doing some cool stuff. Let me know. Is there a titanium stick? I know there's lots of crazy stick electrodes. I remember welding a tool and die one called 9598. That was like $300 for 8 electrodes. But it was also very, very cool. It was a chrome finished electrode. So as soon as you were done welding, you popped the flux off and it was a shiny chrome finish, like right under. But it would get such bad porosity. Like if you got any contamination, it would be like a hole. Like a hole you could look into, like space. It was so bad. It was like it's all coming out. There's an $80 electrode all getting ground out, right? What are repairs like on titanium? Like, do you like? I can't imagine you can just go grab a grinder and start grinding in it. Like grinders hold so much dust. Like I remember when I was working in a full stainless shop, you would not even be able to move a grinder from that section to that section because the stainless grinder stayed in the stainless side, type of thing, right?
Yeah, totally. So yeah, grinding wheel maybe to start, to rough out, if you've got contamination, if you got to remove a section of weld, grinder to start, but definitely carbide burr, dedicated to titanium, for the finishing. So you're not getting anything impregnated in that titanium.
Mm-hmm. That's got to be pretty slow though.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not like titanium is soft.
Oh, that's for sure. So patience definitely comes in.
I'm sure you got some pretty serious pneumatic air tools there. Hopefully it's not some like Dremel or something. So what's up next for you? Like what's on the horizon? 18 years in a mine is serious business. I'd imagine you're moving into some supervisory roles or lead hand roles. What is it that you see yourself doing at the mine for the next 20 years?
Well, lately I've just finished this past summer. I just finished my CWB welding supervisor for steel.
Oh, how'd you like that course?
I really liked it. Yeah,
I liked it too. Yeah,
found it built on a lot of the theory that I had been exposed to in Sudbury at Cambrian.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. A lot of the weld symbols. That was a really good thing to brush up on for sure. So got that. Just kind of getting into the role of doing the welding supervisor thing, on the site that I work, and it's interesting to see the other side, like the administration side.
Mm-hmm.
Something I haven't really been exposed to. So that's really cool. Doing the weld testing, keeping all our paperwork up to date, like as far as welder qualifications, processes, positions, and so on. Interesting stuff for sure. And as I gain experience with that, I would like to. The next thing I'd like to look at would probably be my level 1 welding inspector. So I'd like to maybe take that course and
well, the level 1 builds right off of the supervisor, so you'll find it. The sooner you take it after, you're going to realize that a lot of it overlaps, and you're going to find it quite a bit easier while it's still fresh. Because the supervisor ties into that the level 1 quite well. And then level 2 is its own game. I mean, you're already out in the field for a while by the time you do your level 2. But is there a requirement at your work to do these things, or is this just you professional development?
Yeah, this is just I want to expose myself to something different and just keep learning, keep challenging myself, and I just don't want to stay stagnant. You know what I mean? So it's kind of stuff like that. There was an opportunity. That's why I did the welding supervisor steel course. There was an opportunity to try the welding supervisor role, and I was offered that, and I thought, you know what, that's great. I'll take it. Like, why not try it out? And it's going really well. It's a super cool balance of
Office versus floor. Yeah.
Definitely, and it's still more floor work than office, but it's a nice balance for sure. And I'm not getting any younger either. Like I would, you know,
Mm-hmm.
nice to have that balance and just easier on
Well,
the
you
mind.
definitely do think about it as you get into your 30s and 40s. It's like, how much longer will I last on the floor? And you look around, you see the 50-year-olds that are still on the floor, and you're like, ooh, I don't know if I want to do that long. I mean, kudos to them for holding it out, but I mean,
Yeah.
my dad worked as a welder right until he retired, and I was like by 35 being like, I don't know, like, but I do miss the balance. To be honest, like I'm in the office all the time now. Like, I mean, I once you get into that other side, it starts to kind of suck you in because there's a real lack of experienced, knowledgeable people on the management side. And I'm sure you've noticed that already, and you'll see it a lot more as you expand your career. That so many people at the top of the welding games, companies, infrastructure, really know nothing about welding. They came in from other fields, right? And so it's a person like yourself looking to move into these roles, they'll take you, like they'll like right away. So, which is awesome. It is awesome, but I got to a point where I was like, oh man, I wish I could still, uh, you know, go weld something or take something apart or use my skills because I have all these skills. 30 years of being on the tools that I don't use at all now. Like I try to tell the stories, the podcast. I try to get my experience out there. I was a teacher for 8 years, but where does it go? You know what I mean? Like if I get hit by a car tomorrow, all that knowledge is gone, right?
Yeah.
How does it work for new hires at your work? Like let's say for the listener, someone does want to come apply at your work. What would be some of the qualifications you would hope they would have or would make them more employable for where you are?
Yeah, so I'm definitely nowhere near the HR end of things, but for me,
Yeah.
I would definitely encourage them to have their red seal qualification for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And just other than that, like the open mind, willingness to learn, be eager, ask questions, definitely.
I assume it's shift work, or there's because most of the mines I've worked at is shift work, and that always scares young people away. And I always tell young people, shift work's a part of life.
But
Shift work is a part of this industry. It is what it is. So what are the shifts like at your work?
So there's a few different ones, and that's constantly, changing too. But the predominant shift where we are is 7 on, 7 off, 12-hour days.
Mm-hmm.
That was another bonus of going to the welding supervisor. So I got out of that and went to the 5 and 2,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Normal.
yeah, you don't get the week off and you kind of miss that, but it's they've each got their pros and cons.
They do. Yeah.
Yeah, so typically that's probably, I would imagine, industry wide. I think 7 and 7 is probably pretty popular. But I've heard of 8 and 6.
Some variation of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but yeah, definitely shift work involved for sure.
Yeah, I know. I just had some friends move to Saskatchewan from Ontario looking for work, chasing the money, which is great because we have lots of work out here in the West. And they were like, "Oh, I'm having trouble finding a day job." I was like, "Who do you think you are? You got to cut your teeth for like 10 more years, bro. Like,
Yeah,
you don't just slide into like the primo day job. That takes a little bit of time to get there."
that's right. Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, kids can dream. I mean, if they get lucky and get it, I guess. But I definitely had to do a lot of shift work for a lot of years, and like you said, there's pros and cons. In the summertime, I loved shift work because then I could book holidays for camping because I love camping. So then I would just look at my shifts for coming up for summer, and I'd book. I could take off for like 10 days, and then none of it would be holidays. I'd find that right when you hit a long weekend and your 7 days is coming up, so you got 10 days off paid. Perfect.
Yeah,
I'm gone.
Yeah, for sure.
And what about your involvement with like CanWeld and future things? Do you want to be more involved with the conferences? Do you want to get more involved with maybe some of the chapters of CWB stuff that we're doing? In terms of the outreach and being involved with schools and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I had, prior to going to Canwell 2023 in Moncton, I had no idea about, the chapters, and the CWB Association, and the podcast, and all that. I just think it's awesome. Like you're advertising the trade, and just like it's something great that if somebody wants to, new, whether they're in high school or want to do a change in direction as far as career, like you're getting that information out, and just a bit of exposure to the trade, right? So I think that's important for sure.
And what would you like to see? What is something that we could do better?
Oh, geez, good question.
Hit me with the stick. What am I doing wrong, buddy? Come on. No.
Really can't think of anything. No, I think it's awesome. I think the podcast is great, just to see like the different industries that people are in and the different experiences, and it's awesome. I can't think of anything to no constructive criticism for me, that's for sure.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm sure we get lots through the internet, don't worry. So the comment sections are often disabled. Awesome, man. Well, just last question before we let you go here. It's been a fantastic interview, and I love running into fellow people that worked in the mines or that are in the mines. I love that industry. I love the heavy industry in general. But for yourself, and we kind of touched on it a few times, but let's say you're a young person coming out of school, and you're kind of thinking trades, or you're maybe not even sure what you should do. There's always that obvious pressure, go to university, but you're kind of not feeling it. You're not looking forward to sitting behind a desk for the next 4 years. What would be a piece of advice you'd say to them to kind of look at the trades? How would you convince them?
I would say try it. I mean, I don't know many courses or programs in university where you get called and 2 job offers in one day to work in your field. That'd be awesome, right? And like so many people, whether it's millwright class, electrical, whatever trade, there's always industries that are probably using that college as a farm team kind of thing, and like,
yep,
we'll take your top 5 kind of deal, right? So I think that's a huge benefit and a huge attractant to, like, why not try the trades? And I mean, the apprenticeships are available out there, and just try it and talk to people that are in the field, right?
That's true, and that's wonderful. I love the farm team comment. I bring that up lots because it's true. There's such a need for the trades right now that the colleges and training centers are farm teams. When I was working at the college, I would get calls from the local companies being like, "When are your students graduating? When's graduation day?" And they wouldn't even say, "We want your top 5." They would just be like, "Tell them all to come apply. We'll sort through them, or we'll figure it out." And it's like, and it's been like that for years. Like, I mean, it's not just now. There was a little bit of a lull, I would say maybe like 2014, 2015 with hiring, but even that's gone now. I think right now, pretty much, I think I saw a stat like 97% hiring rate for people coming out of welding school, which, find another profession that's got a stat that high. Good luck.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? All right, man. Well, it's been very good to have you on the podcast here. Is there any shout outs or anything you'd like to say to anybody before we let you go?
I just want to say thanks to you guys for this opportunity, and I just think it's great that you're getting the welding word out there and just showing people different facets of it. I think that's awesome.
Well, thank you very much, and I hope people got interested in what gold mines do and what the mining industry in Canada is like, and for the people listening, it's a huge industry that's growing. There's massive mine builds planned all across Canada for the next 20 years. So it's a great industry to get into now. I'm almost jelly of all the young people getting into it now. I would love to see what's coming up as a young person in those trades. And I personally, and as you can attest to, Jerrick, I had a great time working for that industry. So, it was always really, really good and kept my skills at the top of my game.
Awesome.
All right. And everyone that's been following along with the podcast, thanks so much for making us have the wonderful run that we're having. We're growing and growing. We're closing up this season here in June, but we got lots of stuff coming between now and then. We got CanWeld, we got National Trivia, we got FabTech Canada. We're going to be working with Skills Canada in Quebec in May. We got Women Empowerment Month in March. We got there's just so much stuff coming up. So make sure you keep following us, downloading the episodes and commenting on them. We're always looking for new people to come on the show, and we're always looking for new topics. And if you're going to be at any of the big conferences around North America, look for us. We're probably going to be there somewhere, and we're probably going to be doing podcasts. So come find us and find out what we're doing and how we can either work with you or help you. We'd love to meet you. All right, so have a good day and stay tuned for the next episode.
We hope you enjoyed the show.